All right, guys, we are back here on the show to kind of go over a few stories that I thought were worth mentioning on today's show because they were pretty impactful, not only for this week, but potentially going forward for a couple of these teams. So, the first piece of news that we got really this morning was the fact that the Dolphins and wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. mutually agreed to part ways at this point in the year. OBJ is expected to clear waivers and look for another opportunity with a different team. Obviously, he's expected to clear waivers by Monday, then sign with any other team, obviously, in the NFL. And right away, the Rams, and maybe surprisingly to some people, I think the Eagles would be an interesting place for him to go. He's not going anywhere to be anybody's number one, obviously, and I'm sure he's going to be looking for a decent opportunity to compete in the playoffs. So I think the Rams, one, are familiar with him. Obviously, they won a Super Bowl with him, and the Eagles, Smitty and AJ Brown have been great, and the fact that I'm not sure if they have Jahan Dotson, I think is a worry. I'm pretty sure they do, but I really have not heard too much from him in terms of contributing. So I think that's an area where they could bring in someone like Odell. I mean, it could seem unnecessary, but if they absolutely need someone and they think that bringing in someone from the outside can help them, why not Odell? If anything, he's going to do just as much as Jahan Dotson's doing. So it can't really hurt too much, especially if it's on like the absolute minimum. So I think those two would be interesting destinations for Odell as well. And just basically, it didn't fit in Miami, I think, for a couple reasons, not just because he was behind Tyreek and Waddle, but I think the system also with Mike McDaniel is pretty complicated, honestly. I don't know from personal experience, right, obviously, but it feels like everything is very much like timing oriented, spacing, motions and manipulation and everything like that. You got to be on your X's and O's in layman's terms, right? You got to know not only what you're supposed to do, but the timing of how this guy's breaking on his route and how it affects your route and how you might set a pick for him and things like that. So I think that combined with the fact that Odell had to miss like about a month into the season because of an injury, those two didn't really mix. He was probably, not fully integrated into the system quite as much as he would have liked or as the Dolphins would have liked. So it just really wasn't a fit. He tried to get on a moving train, and it just didn't end up working out. So he has another opportunity here to kind of try and find a new home with somebody here late in the year. He finished his time there in Miami with 9 receptions for 55 yards as well. No receiving touchdowns for Odell in Miami. So we shall see where Odell ends up over, the next week or two. I can't imagine it'll take too long, but you never know. And moving from one wide receiver now to another one, I had to mention KJ Osborne. If you guys are unaware of KJ Osborne, he previously was with the New England Patriots last season, and he was a free agent going into this year. He was with the Minnesota Vikings. Then he signed with the Patriots this year. In a new era, obviously, right? Post Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo, Jacoby Brissett there now as the quarterback. But things didn't really work out for him very much this season, if at all. Not really involved, not really out there playing too much either. So the Patriots and KJ Osborne, they split ways. Obviously, they parted ways on Monday, and just today, the Washington Commanders were expected to pick up KJ Osborne and add him to their team. He's only 27 years old and he was hardly used by New England, like I said. So, I think he's still of value and he can add a lot, really, to the Commanders that's desperately needing any sort of help on the wide receiver end of things. Because if you guys weren't aware also that their other wide receiver, Noah Brown, who was doing pretty well for them this year, he is presumably out for the rest of 2024, unfortunately, with a rib injury or some sort of internal injury. And he's not going to be able to go, if at all, for the rest of the year or just for like several weeks. So they already needed help with Noah Brown there, but now that he's not even playing, I like this move. I think KJ Osborne, again, can add some sort of value to this offense, whether it be as a deep threat or, as an intermediate guy, short route guy. I think the Commanders would take anything at this point. Heck, maybe Odell joins them. I don't know. Why not? Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback already, and I'm sure, the LSU connection's there. And a lot of guys would be dying to play with him. So maybe Odell ends up here as well, along with KJ Osborne. But I do like this move again. Cliff Kingsbury looks like he's got things back running after a 42-point performance against the Titans. So any help that the Commanders can get, I would consider it as a great acquisition, and KJ Osborne fits under that. So I think that's going to be a pretty nice move for them to round out the receiver room. If that's the last thing they do, at least they got a guy in there like KJ to try and complement Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz and Daimi Brown and guys like that, right? So that was also, related to the Odell news just because of the position. Then we got another wide receiver, funny enough. Yesterday, the Kansas City Chiefs got great news for their offense as their wide receiver, Marquise Hollywood Brown, received the final medical clearance to now begin practicing, finally, for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you guys remember, Marquise Brown was signed all the way back in March. He was signed about 9 months ago, and it was looked upon as one of the great acquisitions, I would say. A guy that could take the top off of the defense to complement Rashee Rice once they drafted Xavier Worthy. Also, the potential of seeing all three of those guys out there really got you excited. But then Rashee got hurt, Xavier Worthy is still a rookie, and Hollywood Brown suffered with a dislocated sternoclavicular joint in his shoulder. I won't try to say that again. He dislocated something in his shoulder, so he's been on the injured reserve pretty much the entire year. And there was some thought that he could come back in the playoffs, right, once they started. But now he's been ahead of schedule, and they gave him the medical clearance now, just for this week. The Chiefs are expected to open up his practice window, and, he is obviously closer to coming back than not. Right? And that's great news for them, right? Because we always talk about them being in these close games. We just talked about them in these close games. So the fact that they can have Marquise Brown as one of the guys coming back, they already had Isaiah Pacheco. He's looked pretty great. So having Marquise Brown, adding him to Xavier Worthy, having both of those guys on opposite sides is going to be a nightmare for opposing defenses. So this is phenomenal news for Patrick and for the Chiefs, not only because, you got another receiver, but he's a veteran now, right? He's been in the league a good amount of years, so it's not like you do got to integrate him, but I imagine he's been involved with this offense for a pretty decent amount, at least on the sidelines and whatnot. So that's going to be huge news. When he returns, I expect this offense to look even more efficient and even more explosive when they got their guy back in there. So that's been great news for them. And then just lastly, I thought I'd mention the offensive line, give some love to the big guys up front, and mention how the Broncos and their top offensive lineman, Garrett Bowles, agreed to a new 4-year contract for the former All-Pro left tackle. Garrett Bowles, 32 years old now, was playing on the last year of his current contract, a 4-year, $68 million deal that was signed in 2022. And with this new extension, with this new 4-year extension, he's now signed through 2028, and he's able to continue blocking for the Broncos' new face of the franchise in Bo Nix. And, Bowles is 32 years old, so, there is that age, question, I guess you could say. But, he's been as solid as they come there, at least for them. So knowing that you have a guy that you can rely upon, especially on the blind side of your quarterback, is absolutely massive. He's one of the cornerstones of this Broncos team. Him, Pat Surtain, and now Bo Nix, and even Cortland Sutton as well in there. So Garrett Bowles, he's staying with the Broncos for the foreseeable future, probably going to retire there, and he gets well compensated with his new 4-year contract extension. And with that being said, that's all the news that I wanted to kind of fit into today's show. Obviously, a lot of transactions going on, and you think about Odell potentially going to a new team and how he could impact that, KJ Osborne and how much of an impact he can make on the Commanders, and same thing for Hollywood Brown. All these guys could potentially make some pretty decent impact on one of these teams in the NFL, presumably a playoff team, and we'll see where it goes from here. But in the meantime, we got a couple more segments to get to. One story that I thought was interesting was regarding the Las Vegas Raiders and their owner, Mark Davis. He spoke at the annual December league meeting, and he brought up the future of his general manager and also his head coach, and also Tom Brady and how much he wants to see Tom Brady be involved in the front office and really overseeing some of the football operations that go on with the Raiders. So we're going to give you guys more details on that when we return after this break.